Warning: the radio broadcast you are about to hear was made by men and for men. It may at times seem a little rough around the edges, brash, and certainly not canonically approved by papal authority. But its content may indeed challenge you to become the man, father, husband God has called you to be. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to another week of The Obligation. My name is Jason Murphy. So glad you're here. Joining you today from the Carolina Catholic Radio Network studio on North Tryon in Charlotte. It's quite a treat to be here in these hallowed walls once again. Joined by our producer, Chris. How you doing out there, Chris?
I'm doing great. Glad to be in studio with you, Jason.
Yeah, it's always a treat.
Yeah, always a lot of fun.
We got a great show, got a ton of stuff to cover. Don't know where we'll end up. We're going to be joined by author Charles Fraune. Charles has been a sponsor for the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas the last several years. He's the author of the book Slaying Dragons, What Exorcists See and What We Should Know. He's the founder of the Slaying Dragons Apostolate, dedicated to writing, research, and other works on the topic of spiritual warfare. Charles was the founding theology teacher of Christ the King Catholic High School in Huntersville, and a teacher there for approximately 10 years. So excited to bring him on, and without further ado, let's bring Charles on. Charles, welcome to The Obligation.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be in the studio, too.
I know, it's great, isn't it? It's just a big throwback here. We don't get to play too much in here, but it's nice when we can.
That's right.
A lot of history in these walls. There's been a lot of different stations coming through here, Chris. What other stations have been through?
Yes, we've had 106.1 FM, which was Mixed 106 for a while, and then we had WHVN 1240 AM, which was Heaven Radio, and WAVO 1150 AM, which was part of Heaven Radio in Rock Hill, and also the former WCGC 1270 AM was part of Heaven Radio before it became Carolina Catholic Radio, and I've been working for it ever since 2000.
Lots of Christian words and
Yes.
messages coming through the walls of this place.
That's right.
They're as thick in the walls as the coffee I can smell when I walk in the doors.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, Ann, we were coming off a big weekend. The 12th Annual Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas was a huge success at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church. We had close to 250 men present. We had the seminarians of the Diocese of Charlotte, Bishop Jugas. We had some great talks from our own Dr. John Aquaviva of Faith and Sport here at the Carolina Catholic Media Network. We also had Dr. Ray Garundi. Tim Staples was there. It's been 4 months since he had a major stroke, and Tim was there, and he lit the house on fire. So he was. His wife was there with him, just kind of still watching. He was moving a little gingerly, just making sure he was getting his feet under him. And but Tim did great. I mean, for someone suffering a catastrophic stroke 4 months ago, and to be able to throw out Scripture and the Catechism and canon law like it's just second nature, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So he did a great job. Were you able to hear much of that, Charles?
Just a little bit, just a few clips, because we were staying busy over by the vendors.
Yes, I was glad to see all the vendors there. That's the most vendors I've seen in several years.
Yeah, it was full all the way around the wall.
Yeah, we had some great vendors out there. Steve Cunningham, good friend of yours.
That's right. Census Fidelium, everybody loves that.
That's right. Yeah, he
It's
loves
good
that.
to have him local.
Yes. Yeah, what a great guy. The Latin Mass community was out there as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Strong roots here in Charlotte. St. Thomas, a Latin Mass community area, very much so, and St. Anne's. Were you able to talk with some of the other vendors?
Yeah, Keith Nestor.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Great.
was. I did. 3 podcasts with him last fall
Oh, wow.
on spiritual warfare, sacramentals, Halloween,
Nice.
and so providentially, I got him placed next to me at the vendor table, so we got to chat a bit.
Very nice.
I was a lot taller than he expected me to be, because we just did the Zoom podcasts.
Yeah. It's funny when you don't see him other than on the other side of a screen.
That's
It's hard
right.
to tell.
That's right.
Yeah, him and his wife Estelle made the drive in an RV, and they part of the rosary crew. They stopped throughout the country and pray the rosary on the way.
Sounds like he was a perfect launch speaker for the conference.
Yeah, I think it was perfect placement. You know, getting that strong convert story, very dedicated, very excited about the faith, and I guess he converted in maybe 2018. So he is very fresh Catholic, and he is on fire.
Yeah,
Yep.
you can tell.
He had a great, one of the great takeaways from the conference, one of the great quotes I remember, because I sent it to my wife as soon as I heard it. He said, "You find out what you're filled with when you're bumped." Talking about, what we do with our lives and what we fill ourselves with. And I've been thinking a lot on that. But I thought that was a really strong quote there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, when we get tested, we know what we have and we know what we're missing.
Yeah.
When we fall, we know how much we need God to fill us and exactly where.
Absolutely. And it's the day-to-day kind of grindy things that I find for myself. And I was thinking about that this morning, taking a few moments in prayer and wondering, what it is, when I'm bumped by life or by my kids or by my family or what it was, and thinking of this anxiety or this quick temperedness and trying to, we really got to find out what that is as men, because if that's our quickest response, that means that's what's kind of right there in us. And I find for myself, I'm trying to dig a little deeper there, find out what that's about.
Yeah, because the virtues, cultivating the virtues, that's the key.
Yeah.
And if when we notice these flares of vice, that's when we realize, there's a weakness that we must conquer.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, we will be conquered instead.
This is true. It's a great time of the year. We're just entering into Lent. That was the first Saturday of Lent for the men's conference, so it was a great time for men to reflect on, what direction we're going to go. And the theme of the conference, Quo Vadis, where are you going? A great reflection for us all as we enter into Lent, following our Lord, through his 40 days of fasting and abstinence. So it was a great day throughout. Dr. Ray Grundy wrapped it up with, lots of humor and lots of real life takeaways, being the father of 10 adopted children and 40 years a clinical psychologist. I don't think there's much that could shake him.
Yeah, that's quite the experience. We need to have him local too.
Yeah, Dr. Ray, he was great. He had a funny little joke there. He said, all of my kids, they've been given all the same opportunities, and some are going to go to Penn State, and some are going to go to State Penn. And I think that's true for all of us, right? I think we're given so much grace and so many opportunities, and we can do with that, what we would.
It's true. Sad but true.
All kind of in our hands. I mentioned to you before we came on the show, was listening to Bear Wozniak, Deep Adventures, and he was interviewing Kennedy Hall. Are you familiar with Kennedy?
Yeah, I have I haven't read his book that you're going to mention.
Yeah.
I did do a podcast with him for, I can't remember what the network's called, Veritatis Network,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
A couple months ago, yeah.
So he has a book, Terror of Demons, Reclaiming Traditional Catholic Masculinity. I think that's a pretty solid idea of where we are, in a culture and a society of soft, effeminized men. And I was listening to that and trying to think, where did this come from? How do we get this idea of this? When did this happen? And of course, I naturally go to the 1960s. That's where I go and I look what happened with the church in the 1960s, what happened with society in the 1960s, and my thoughts on it. And I'll pass it over to you, but I feel like men, up until that point, and I'm sure there's other times in history, but I think up until that point, in a sense, we depended on the church and the priest to kind of set the tone of our manliness and what that is, and looking to them as the example of prayer and morality, perhaps, And then as the 60s, the 1960s and all the changes that came with Vatican II, and, the church, began its kind of descent away from orthodoxy and kind of traditional Catholicity, I think men kind of followed with it because we saw our examples and, these priests who we admired and we followed. And I think we followed them into that for the next 30, 40 years until maybe now, we're starting to realize that is not masculinity, and we've missed it. So what are your thoughts on that topic there?
Yeah, I agree. The lack of heroes, especially if the church, which is the mystical body of Christ, is weak, and then she's the one presenting true masculinity through the priest, through the examples, through the strong teachings, through the traditions, the tradition of sacrifice and penance, if all that strength acquired through suffering is just plummets, then and we lose our heroes. Even the penance. The one thing Steve's been good at is challenging me lately on the traditional Lenten practices, which I'm still kind of learning because it's been withheld from us, like the traditional. Because men benefit from suffering, from hardship, from challenges that builds up the virtue, destroys our vices. And if you have a soft Lent, which is one of the things the church presents to us now, a soft Lent is not going to produce men. A real tough, self-sacrificial Lent like we used to have is what would create masculinity, both in the priests who are going to be the public examples to us, the witnesses, the ones who can actually answer our questions as well. But so many things. And then the culture. I was talking to a priest the other day, like the culture used to be kind of Christian, at least on a facade of Christianity, giving us role models, examples. But now it's it's a total flip. All the public examples are just pathetic, if not,
non-existent.
That's right.
Yeah. No, that's great. We're gonna take a quick break. We're talking with Charles Fraune, author of the book Slaying Dragons: What Exorcists See and What We Should Know, and we'll be right back on The Obligation.
"2022 is bringing many new and exciting changes to our Carolina Catholic Apostolate, built to communicate how to better learn, love, and live our Catholic faith. We begin with our name change to Carolina Catholic Media. This reflects the expanded scope of Carolina Catholic Radio to include the development of our podcast, streaming, social media, YouTube, and direct marketing platforms. 2022 is a very important year for the Catholic Church. As a result, Carolina Catholic Media will feature more local news, information, and conversation to reflect what's happening now and how it impacts our local Catholic community. Throughout the year, Carolina Catholic Media will showcase our Catholic schools and homeschools, the Charlotte Diocese 50th anniversary, and the 2-year worldwide synod process that begins on the diocesan level. We encourage you to get involved, join us, and catch the spirit. The Carolina Catholic Media Apostolate is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are 100% funded by you. Please consider a donation, monthly tithe, or business sponsorship to support our mission and vision to spread the truth of Jesus Christ and our Catholic faith across the Carolinas. Thank you for discerning a role in our apostolate. May God bless you abundantly."
Did you know that 90% of older adults wish to stay in their home as they age? Aging in place has many benefits. It tends to improve quality of life, which in return improves physical health. Also, retaining independence as we age is critically important to our mental health. Hi, my name is Meredith Dignan, and I am the president of Harmony Home Solutions and an active parishioner of St. Patrick Cathedral. We are your trusted partner for aging in place. We strive to enhance the lives of older adults and their families by providing premier aging in place and universal design lifestyle solutions that increase safety beautifully. Now is the time to get your aging in place plan in order with Harmony Home Solutions. Visit our website today at hhsclt.com. Again, that's hhsclt.com. Or give us a call at 980-220-8821. Again, that's 980-220-8821. We want to help you live an empowered and beautiful life.
And we are back to The Obligation. Thanks for being with us. We are sitting down today with Charles Fraune in the studios for Carolina Catholic Radio on North Tryon. We've been talking about the importance of true, authentic masculinity as traditionally understood. And, we were talking through the break just about the importance of men and as fathers and husbands and their leadership in their families. It's so important. I think the guys innately these days, they have a huge craving for that fellowship and that brotherhood that just does not exist. Men are used to being, getting together, maybe hitting the bar, swinging the clubs, watching the game, but very little, more times than not, nothing spiritual is going to come out of those conversations, unfortunately. And I crave that as a man. There's times, when I'm out maybe with other guys and hoping that, a conversation may jump up and, unless I initiate it, and that's, that can be, our responsibility as well. But we were talking about, just a sense that since the 1960s, perhaps it's just kind of a gauge we're looking at, as the church begin its descent away from as the authority per se of fatherhood and masculinity. Men, kind of followed that way. And it's our duty now to reclaim that masculinity in a Catholic, traditional sense, and get rid of the soft men. These soft men, this is sort of a product of the world, it's a product of society, and they've convinced us, and I think they go hand in hand with being soft. They've taken away the battle, and the battle, of course, we know is between good and evil, and in the existence of Satan and his influence in this world. And so if we believe that there's no opponent, then certainly there's no battle, right? It's sort of, out of sight, out of mind. Oh yes, there's no evil. There's just psychological problems, and we can solve them with medication and counseling, but there's really nothing evil. What say you, Charles?
That's right. We know as a result of living with the denial of Satan's existence for, 50 years, whatever we're up to now, we've seen the damage. I'm doing a lot of work, as we were talking during the break, on a new book focusing on the influence of evil, of the occult, the allure of the occult towards the youth primarily, and the destruction it's having all over the world. And exorcists are talking about it quite a bit, but it's one of the reasons I think it's happening from something I was listening to right before I came over here, is that parents don't get it. Parents don't understand how evil these things are. I was talking to another priest the other day, we used to be able to trust the culture. So it's like this spirit of not only weakness among fathers who are not protecting their flock, but a spirit of gullibility. For some reason, we think we should be able to trust the news, trust the newspaper, trust whatever we hear, which it'd be nice if you could. It'd be nice if everybody was good and everybody told the truth, but we know as a fact that there is so much lying happening, and that's a sign of the devil's presence. That's one of the telltale signs of the diabolical activity. So we have the spirit of gullibility. So like one of the parents, it was this interview of a kid who had killed people after being involved in satanic stuff, and the mom said, I saw some signs that he was involved in things that were bad, and like heavy metal music was a big influence for this kid. And she's like, well, I thought that since they were selling it, it must be okay. So the spirit of gullibility was available at Walmart or wherever, and therefore it must be okay. Like Walmart is selling like Baphomet statues. I mean, you can learn everything you need in order to become a Satanist from Target, Walmart.
I'm pretty sure there's Ouija boards there.
Ouija boards, spell books.
Yeah.
I mean, Books A Million had some big display. Somebody sent me some pictures of it. Just all about the occult. Yeah. Like tons and tons of things. So the spirit of gullibility has to be killed, exorcised. If it's diabolical, like maybe I need to ask some exorcists about this spirit of gullibility out there. Is this kind of a spirit of oppression over the culture? And if the church lets down her guard, lays down her arms, as we know she did in the 60s, especially abandoning the exorcism and deliverance ministry, we're going to be vulnerable, not only vulnerable to attacks, but also to confusion. Yes. And that's another thing we were talking about. The spirit of confusion is out there in far too many places right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you speak of that in such subtle ways. You would think, in a good, strong Catholic home, you wouldn't have to worry about witchcraft or any of those, influences with your kids or anything. But interestingly enough, the other day, our son has a laptop which the school, gives to all their students, and they're pretty secure. As there's they have good ratings on them, so you can't get to different pornography and just things they shouldn't be on, which is good. But there's a lot of times where things will sneak in that maybe the networking group or the school administration didn't think of. And going back over a year ago, when they first introduced the laptops to the kids in middle school, our kids don't have electronics. I send our kids to Catholic schools because I trust that they're going to raise and protect my child, as I would. And of course, we know, no matter the standards, no one's going to raise our own children as our own. But interestingly enough, they didn't have any protocols for Amazon. So they had, maybe YouTube blocked, and they had a lot of, questionable sites and very limited searches and things that will pop up on Google. But they didn't have Amazon, and you would be surprised at what you could find on Amazon. And so we happened to run across the searches in the computer and were appalled and disgusted that our son was, exposed to some of those things. And of course, we contacted the administration, and they made quick changes and said, it's just hard these days, with everything going on. But I make that point to make this one because the other day, about a week ago, I came down, son was down there on his computer, and I was like, hey, what you working on? And it looked like something, it was a strange site, and it was a site that you entered at what age you will die. And he had entered, and it said he would die in whatever, 2084, something like that, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And I had to enter into this conversation about witchcraft, which it seems innocent enough. It's just kind of like a magic 8-ball. Yeah. One of those things, magically appeared in our house, which I remember those as a kid, and they were fun. Will my mom get mad at me if I eat a cookie? Maybe, or better check later, or shake again, or whatever. It seems innocent enough, but those little things are little gadgets that will kind of get your child or yourself's mind maybe around that, and you'll start to entertain, that type of occult situation where maybe, should I steal this? Should I hurt this person? You don't know, and so with that little game of, when I shall die, of course no one knows when we will die. Only God knows that. No one knows the hour of the day, but I think these are little tricks, aren't they? I mean, you think? Yeah,
I think the subtle, because it's a suggestion that there is some other power that could tell you the future.
Yeah.
And that God's not going to tell you when you're going to die, but maybe this thing will. And even if you realize, this was a silly little game, it starts the wheels of curiosity going. Because another avenue of my research right now is the similarity between the fall of man and the fall of the angels. Like, we're all living out 80 to 90 years here, and we're being tempted to choose God or to fall, to choose ourselves or to submit to God, just like the devil did. So there's this satanic self-worship that we're all tempted towards intrinsically because of the fall, not even because there's a demon.
Right.
So if we get these temptations externally to control our life, to control others, or which is occultic, which is satanic, diabolical, and all that stuff, then it can inflame a weakness. There's already a wound. There's already an inclination to glorify ourselves. So if we think we can actually attain power or access power, then in the context where there is not good, for most people, not good catechesis, where you don't know the damage, you don't know the danger, you don't know the sinfulness of this behavior, you may go into it and just see what happens. Because why not? There's no morality attached to it as far as you know.
We can make ourselves like unto God.
Yeah, you set your own rules, your own rituals, you make your own religion, and it all revolves around you.
Yeah.
You think.
It's interesting. Earlier today, we're in the 40 days of life right now. Started March 2nd, Ash Wednesday, and it goes through Palm Sunday, which is April 10th. And so Father Roux over at the cathedral invited me to go and pray a rosary at the Planned Parenthood building over near Kings Road in Cherry neighborhood. So we went over there, and there was a little Christian group there, and they were praying. And of course, they're a little more in your face than we had planned on. We just go there, and we're just going to say a quiet rosary. And it was a quiet day. There wasn't much going on. Some of the the people would show up, and some of the Christian groups, they would try to reach out to the people pulling in and say, hey, we have an option for you. God loves you, loves your child. And of course, as soon as they started to try to contact any of the people pulling in, the people working at Planned Parenthood started beating on drums and putting up umbrellas and creating this just ruckus so they couldn't hear each other. Oh. And so it was pretty much like that the whole day. And of course, it was just myself and Father Roux and another gentleman, and we just prayed there quietly. And then right before we were about to leave, a young man came out, and he had been inside the building, so I imagine he's waiting on someone. And so he approached the gate. And I think this is like the people who work there certainly don't want you to have conversation with the people going in there. But anyway, he approached the gate and started striking up a conversation with this Christian minister. And he was asking some questions, and they were actually good questions. But the Christian minister, I think he was so dead set on convincing this young man, like, you're making a mistake, and, God doesn't want you to do that, and God loves you. And I listened, and I was just listening to him, and he would make some points, and he'd bring up some good questions. And he said, well, you believe that God is in you, right? And the minister said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, then if God is in you, then you're God, right? You're like God. And he's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And so he had this misunderstanding, but then he said, well, God made everything, right? And the minister, yes, God made everything. He said, well, then everything is our, God made you, yes, God made me, so we're God. And he was asking, and I know on the surface it sounds, to anyone who knows their catechism and knows, their faith, that they're kind of, the young man was off with kind of some of the beliefs he had, but he made these good points that, of course, could not be answered by this minister. So when we left, we told him, just keep asking questions, and the truth, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And but it was interesting, to hear even from a 20-year-old, he mentioned that he was 20 years old, that how could God allow, if there was a God, how could he allow all this bad stuff in the world? Mm-hmm. And that's the trick, God, even society wants to present it to where, there is no God. And that's the trick, right? So, and it goes back to, if we believe there's no opponent, then there's no battle, but we know we're in that battle. And I'll close with this before we have to go straight to break. And we showed the video Into the Breach, which is a Knights of Columbus initiative. And it basically just talks about masculinity and the role of men and the families, and how, we've kind of walked away from those and shunned those responsibilities. But their biggest point at the end of the video was, God has a plan for you, but so does Satan. Right. So we'll pick back up on that when we get back. Thanks for tuning in to The Obligation. This is Jason Murphy for the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas and the Obligation Radio Show here on the Carolina Catholic Media Network. This Lent, turn off the noise and turn on Catholic Radio. Catholic Radio is live and on the air at AM 1270, broadcasting from Belmont, North Carolina to the Charlotte regional area. Carolina Catholic produces more local content than most Catholic radio stations across our country. Tune in on air, online, on demand, and anytime at www.carolinacatholic.org. Make sure to catch the 2022 Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas replays each Saturday afternoon starting at 3 p.m. You can catch Keith Nestor, Tim Staples, Dr. Ray Garundi, our own Dr. John Aquaviva, and find out what the buzz is all about for the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas. Also, make sure to tune in to the featured men's shows on Carolina Catholic, Faith and Sport with Dr. John Aquaviva, airing on Mondays at 5 p.m. and on demand. The Remnant with Stephen Thomas, Bill Snyder, and Ray Haywood, airing on Saturdays at 5, and my show, The Obligation, which airs at 5 p.m. on Fridays. Catch all of these shows and more at AM 1270, on air, online, and over the app at www.carolinacatholic.org. Once again, this has been Jason Murphy. God bless, and Esto Vir. Welcome back to The Obligation. Once again, we're sitting down with Charles Fraune. We're having a great conversation here about the reality of Satan and evil in this world, and the trick that I think society and the devil has, trying to convince us that there is no evil. And if there is no evil, there is no God, and we're just left to our own demise. But I was speaking about the video Into the Breach, and at the end of that video, it was said very strongly with some really strong music behind it that God has a plan for all of our lives, but so does Satan. And you mentioned that you might have mentioned that in your book.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's in both Slaying Dragons or the youth book Swords and Shadows, which I wrote while researching Slaying Dragons. But when I was doing my research, actually before I even had any intention of writing books, I was talking to the chaplain at the Christ the King, and he said that very clearly. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of it. God, everybody knows God has a plan for your life, but most people don't realize Satan has a plan for your life too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while God has assigned a guardian angel to you, which is not going to go anywhere, the devil may be assigning demons to you as well to harass you, but this is one of the keys, those can be dispersed, whatever, cast away. Yeah. So we can always have hope that Satan's plan will come to nothing. God's plan will always triumph if we submit to it. Which is a hopeful thing, but at the same time, the alarm bells need to go off because most people don't care. Most people don't really care about heaven. We have a very materialistic, earthly mindset right now, which is motivating a lot of these self-glorification things. Like I was talking to a different priest earlier last week about, he came from Africa and he's working here in the United States, but that in Africa people go into the occult because of poverty, seeking control, seeking wealth, seeking like to get somewhere, to get out of poverty. Here, people go into the occult almost out of an abundance. We have so much, I want more, and I want it now. So it's like we're becoming these miniature gods as a result.
Yeah.
And then we rewrite everything. We say there's no evil. We spin, even like the way Satanists work. They try to spin everything and confuse Christians who are not educated and are just prey to it. But so it's Satan's plan is playing out for each one of us in a very individual way. He uses everything he can, all the wounds, all of our mistakes, all of our sins. The diabolical realm knows what we've been doing, what we are doing. They can kind of predict where we're going and guide things. But we do have, as we were saying, we do have defenses if we know about them.
Right.
And that goes back to the confusion. If we don't know, we can't call on our angel or really benefit from the sacraments and sacramentals.
What do you think the best use of that is? If someone's out there listening and they feel maybe they're troubled, maybe they're going through some spiritual oppression of some sort. What's a good immediate, I don't want to say quick fix, but what's a good go-to that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think sometimes when they're in that situation like that, the person has essentially imploded. They've seen despair, they've become confused, and they've given up. There's an element of despair already present, so they've imploded and they're trapped inside of themselves. So the key, really, and this is why it's so powerful, is go to confession. First step, go to confession. Just get enough contrition. You need, there's imperfect contrition and perfect contrition. Imperfect contrition is you don't want to go to hell. You know you've sinned. You don't want to go to hell, so you go to confession because you're sorry, because you don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
Your love for God's not perfect, but that's enough to go to confession.
Right.
The imperfect contrition. So try to pray and just nurture your faith. If your faith is dying, bring it up a little bit. Ask God, like, give me faith enough to go to confession.
Yeah.
Make a good confession. And there is a supernatural power acting in the confessional. It's not just a psychological trick. So we have to remember that, too. Some people, we're so psychologized. We think it's all in the mind. Well, it's not. This is an external power operating on you if you let it. So go to confession, let that be the breakthrough. And then there's so much more work to do at that point. But confession's easy. We have so many great priests, especially in the Charlotte area. We are kind of spoiled in that regard. I talk to a lot of people over the country, and they're like, I don't know any good priests. And so then you have some issues.
Confession, obviously, that's a great place to start. The place to start. That's one of the great things about the men's conference, and one of my great joys putting that together is seeing the flocking of men to the confessional on that day. There's just lines throughout the day, guys getting there, and I don't know, some may have gone last week, some may have gone 2 weeks ago, some may have gone 2 years ago, some may have gone 10 years ago, and some may have not been in a very, very long time. And I know for a fact that there are each one of those are probably there. So with all the grace present and being motivated and lifted up by the speakers and the fellowship, that is just one of the great things to see at the men's conference. So definitely that's one thing I'm working on myself. Throughout Lent, making sure I'm staying regular because I can feel it. I think we can all feel it. Maybe we're not out there committing the mortal sins, and completely turning our back on God, but it's the little pieces. My daughter Anna just made her first confession a couple weeks ago, and I just kind of gave her the imagery of the white dress. She has this wonderful, beautiful white dress now, and just to be careful, because the one little drop here and then another little drop there, and all of a sudden your pretty little white dress is not so pretty anymore. But the beautiful part is that you can go right back and it's just as clean as white. And then I know over at St. Patrick's they're having a Lenten retreat over the next couple days, and there's a priest there. He's actually 92 years old, and he was in the military for a number of years and been a priest for most of his life. But he was, talking about the importance of confession because they're going to be offering, confession during after his talks each night. I think they started Sunday. They went last night. They'll be tonight at 7, and then wrapping up Wednesday night. But there'll be confessions the whole time. And he was saying, the graces that you receive in confession, those are actual graces, and it's like a storing up of grace. And you don't know, maybe you're not committing any sin right now, but when the temptation comes along, that's when that grace is going to kick in. and that's where you're going to see the fruits of it.
Yeah, and you just with the imagery you're using, like to avoid sin, we have to be filled with grace, and that's what God's trying to do with all the sacramentals is fill us up with grace, so that when temptations come, we with the divine power can ignore the temptation, battle the temptation, dismiss the temptation, and at the same time become stronger. When every time we conquer a temptation with God's help, He gives us more grace, more merit. So it's this spiraling upward in holiness if we just can get it going, get out of the gates, so to speak.
Yeah, they certainly wear us down. I know. I mean, I usually stay pretty good, at least every 2 to 3 weeks. But a couple weeks ago, I let myself go about 2 months, and you can feel it. It's kind of like when you're staying in shape and you're exercising, and you're on the routine, and you're hitting the gym, and you're feeling it, and you miss one day and you miss another, and before you know it, you missed a few weeks, and you try to get up and go run a lap or lift the weights, and the strength that's not there. So it's the same in the spiritual realm. When we have that grace and we have it stockpiled up, not just for abundance of storage, but we have it there for our use and in times of need. It makes such a difference. In those times that you're able to go more often. They just continue to build you up and fill us more with God's grace and unite us with Him. So you made a statement earlier about, when we were talking about the occult and how that the abundance of wealth or power or lands or whatever can sometimes be an inspiration towards that occult for more, because, we want more and more and more. We just, insatiable. And, of course, we have everything going on with Russia and Ukraine. And I ran across this article. It was by CBN. That's the Christian Broadcasting Network. And that's Pat Robinson's broadcast for like 60 years. He does the 700 Club. So it's a media evangelization and humanitarian aid Christian organization. But there was a title, and it was called "What Does Vladimir Putin Believe About God? Why Some Say He Thinks He's a Messianic Figure." Have you heard that? Have you heard that article?
I have not until you told me about it.
So, I was reading through it briefly, and there's just some points. His mother was a devout Christian. He's worn a crucifix around his neck for most of his life, and he's embraced the Russian Orthodox Church, and he's used it to advance his own political purposes in many cases, domestically and internationally. And then further down, there's a bold print here, and it says, Putin sees himself as a messianic figure. So they quote Harry Farland of the BBC recently said, Putin views himself as a messianic figure, a savior to reunite Eastern Orthodox churches under Moscow. Moscow, or Russian Orthodoxy for centuries saw itself as a guardian of the true faith in contrast to Western Catholicism and Protestantism. And Moscow, according to this lore, is the third Rome, the seat of true Christendom, after Constantinople and the Roman Empire. What are your thoughts on that imagery?
Yeah, it's hard to know what to deal with Putin. I had some thought that we've seen imagery in the past several years, maybe even decades, 10 years or so, of him as an active Christian, him going to different churches, being with the I don't know what the head of the church there is called, what his title, but being with him. And then there's also news reports of him instilling, putting a crackdown kind of on immorality to a certain extent. I don't know all the details. I haven't really kept up with Russia over the years, but I've been hearing all these things in the background. It's kind of the chatter. And so it's hard. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Just wondering. Like, I was actually talking to a subcontractor the other day who's from Russia, and his family had to leave from Chechnya years ago, and so they are not a fan of Putin. And he still stays in contact, but he, of course, is in. He's afraid for the rest of his family, and they fear him. But he said, he just thinks that Putin is bored. He said, he's just kind of bored, and he just wants to extend his empire. He just wants to keep going, and you made it sound like, and from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of protests in Russia that are really against what's going on over there. And I just wonder how much of this is his own doing, and how much really is for the greater of Russia. I don't know, but some interesting thoughts out there for sure, with all that going on in the world.
Yeah, and I wonder if we'll ever figure out what's going on until it's already happened, just because talking earlier about the lack of trustworthiness from the news, we saw this during the whole COVID, whatever you want to call it, last couple of years, like not being able to trust people and just very suspicious global dictatorship tendency. And I don't know where Putin was on that whole thing, so I think that's one of the issues, because there are other people talking about NATO, the connection between NATO and Putin,
yes, and
that hatred apparently that's there. So it's
because NATO kind of has that one world government, new world order kind of imagery there, and we can go back to George Bush the first. There's a famous video of him saying, that we're seeking that new world order. They're working towards that new world order. So you just really, it's hard to say. We're definitely in some troubling times. Definitely the more important reason to stay close to the sacraments, get back to confession, make sure your prayer life is on par, because we are in uncharted waters at this point, it looks like. Things are...
Yeah, and now maybe a good Lent to take up the traditional Lenten practices with much more fasting, abstaining, much more rigorous, much more painful.
Yeah, they are, but there's a lot of grace to be achieved there, and from those practices and those sacrifices and those penances. So I think we're getting a little bit close to Charles's time with us. We appreciate you coming on. We have a lot more ground to cover, but I'm sure we will be able to resume where we left off next time.
Yeah, this has been good.
So we appreciate you coming in, and if people want to look in more to your book, where could they go? What's the best route?
Well, if they want to, so all my books are on Amazon, Slaying Dragons, and then there's a workbook now, but also on my website, where you support me more, support Amazon less, and that's theretreatbox.com.
Okay.
And then I also have a blog, which I'm not writing on much because I'm working on a new book, but that's theslayingdragonsbook.com. And then find me on Twitter and Facebook.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm out there.
All right. Great stuff. Charles, thanks for coming in and joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
And we'll be right back.
The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
Hey everybody, my name's Bill Snyder. I'm one of the hosts of The Remnant, along with my good friends Stephen Thomas and Ray Haywood. And we are so very blessed to be able to broadcast this hard-hitting men's show on the Carolina Catholic Media Network every single Saturday at 5 o'clock p.m. This show offers perspective from 3 different generations of men, and we tackle tough topics. But the amazing thing is, while we're hard-hitting, we never leave you angry and always hungry for more. So I hope you listen to us. You can tune in a variety of ways on air at 1270 a.m. in the Charlotte area. You can also follow, friend, and like us on social media. You'll be able to find our social media channels available to you by searching for Carolina Catholic Media Network. There's also a wonderful app on both the Apple and Google Play stores. You are able to download it. Just search for Carolina Catholic Media Network, and you will find us and our podcasted versions of the show right there in the app. We hope you tune in, and as we always say, may God bless you and your families.
And welcome back to The Obligation. My name is Jason Murphy, here with Chris Pressler in the studio. Chris, what do you think about that? That was a great talk with Charles, right?
Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed that, and especially after we got off the air during that break, I found out he lives in the same neck of the woods that I do in Mount Holly.
That's right.
Just like right down the street.
Man, so much good coming out of Mount Holly and Belmont.
Yeah.
It's great stuff. Yeah, Mount Holly's beautiful. Love it out there. I know the seminary's out there as well. And you guys are pretty much near that, I think.
Yeah. Mount Holly and Belmont are like right next door to each other. So our transmitter site for Carolina Catholic Radio is right there in Belmont, where our signal originates.
Yeah.
And where I pretty much do all my work from there and from my house and here.
Yeah, staying busy. I know it's great being back on the airwaves. I know that.
Sure is, yeah. Yeah, and also the rebranding of our name for the website and the app to carolinacatholicmedia.org and the Carolina Catholic Media app. So the people who want to tune in have 3 ways to be able to listen to Carolina Catholic Radio.
That's right.
That's pretty awesome.
It is. Yeah, you don't realize how many people are listening till you're not there for a little bit, and we get so many comments of, man, where are you guys at? I've been trying to turn into 1270 and haven't heard you. So
yeah.
I like listening. I like being able to turn on and listen in the car. I'm kind of an old dog with that kind of stuff. I don't like using the app. I like going right to the radio, keeping it tuned in.
When our chief engineer, Tim Timmons, first got the transmitter and everything going again, he called me and said, hey, how about turn on the radio and see how the signal sounds? We just went back on the radio, so as soon as I turned on the radio, it started coming out loud and clear. I was like, man, that sounds good.
Yeah. So what do you think about all this going on with Ukraine and Russia? We've got gas prices hitting $5 almost. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that's rough, especially with the gas prices. I drive a Dodge Charger and I have to use mid-grade, and it's over $4 a gallon right now.
Yeah, I was on the interstate yesterday, and I hadn't really paid attention to the diesel prices because I usually go straight to the unleaded, but I saw the diesel is climbing well over $5, and that's going to hit $6 and $7, and we have everything's shipped via diesel truck.
Right.
I'm in the construction field, and all the materials, all those are continually to go up. If we can even get them, there's not enough drivers, there's not enough workers, not enough fuel here. And before I left to come out to the studio, I saw something that I guess the United States has now agreed to stop bringing oil in from Russia.
Yeah, they should have done that way before now.
Yeah, I think what's going on now we could have handled 6 months ago, and
I do too.
And maybe different powers that be, we may not even be in the situation.
Right.
So it's very unfortunate. We're definitely sending our prayers out to the people of Ukraine.
Yes.
Some very sad times going on in Eastern Europe right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the truckers. I heard the other day that a lot of the truckers are protesting here in the U.S. like they were doing in Canada, and a lot of them are going up towards Washington and surrounding the Capitol protesting.
Oh, wow.
The COVID regulations and everything, just like the Canadian truck drivers did.
Yeah, I saw a sign the other day when I was traveling up to Greensboro. It was Freedom Truckers. There was a sign, a banner hanging off the interstate. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Coming off the men's conference, it was such a great day. We missed you out there.
Yeah, I know. I really missed doing a live broadcast like we usually do. We didn't get to do that this year, but I enjoyed putting on the instant replay on Sunday on Carolina Catholic Radio. I got to pretty much hang out here at the studio by myself, had the whole studio to myself, and just hung out and watched the conference on YouTube and broadcasted across Carolina Catholic Radio and carolinacatholicmedia.org and on the app to make sure everybody could hear the rebroadcast. And I just enjoyed watching the conference, hearing Dr. John Aquaviva especially, because as you know and listeners know, I'm the producer for Faith in Sport.
That's right.
Had a lot of fun doing that show with Dr. John, so I enjoyed his speaking there at the conference, and we enjoyed having you on as a guest this week on Faith in Sport.
Oh, yeah.
Having you call in. That
was great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love being a part of that show. It's so fun. I came in a couple weeks ago and sat down with Dr. John for the entirety of this show, and then we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hated I wasn't able to be here for that show. That was an awesome show you two guys did, but you did a great job.
I appreciate
I missed that one.
Yeah, we also had Ed Billick. He's our master of ceremonies.
Ed Billick.
There you go. Yeah, he was great. It was moving. It was a wonderful day. Ed did a great job, and it flowed really well. Just love seeing all those guys coming together in brotherhood and fellowship. I think back to, I guess, when Carolina Catholic Radio first did a broadcast. I think they may have with the 2019 conference, but my relationship didn't really get started until the 2020 conference, and that was the beginning of March of 2020. And we all know, within like 2 weeks, the world was shut down, and it was wonderful that we were able to get that that conference, off the ground. And if it would have been a couple weeks later, it wouldn't have. And we actually had about 500 guys that year. We had a huge number of guys.
Yeah, I remember that. That was the first one that I did with John and Ed on location. And I think it was out at St. Patrick's Cathedral, wasn't it?
Well, St. Matthew's.
St. Matthew,
St. Matthew's 2020.
Yeah.
St. Patrick's was 2019, I believe.
Yeah.
I wasn't around for that one.
That's the one I was thinking about. Actually, the 2019 one was the first one I did with John and Ed, and we were sitting right by the front door as people came in. So during the whole broadcast, you could hear the door opening, closing, people coming in. But we managed to do the broadcast and make it work.
Yeah.
And we had even better broadcast the next year. You were talking about it at St. Matt's. That was a really good broadcast we did there.
And so thinking of 2020, we barely squeaked out, and then of course 2021, it was right in the midst of the pandemic, so numbers were down a little bit. But this year, with everything going on, I'm really glad that we were able to get the guys in there, and it's right during Lent, a good time of the year to reflect and pray and kind of get our spiritual workings all prepared for Easter coming up here in a few short weeks. It'll be here before we know it. And I keep going back to hopefully we'll have the 2023 without a hiccup. With so many weird, crazy things going on in the world, with no telling where the pandemic era will land in the next 6 months or a year, and with the Russia-Ukrainian thing going on, and our economy's being hit quite a bit, and I know it's a tough time for a lot of people.
Right.
If ever there's a time for prayer, I think it's right now. If we really it's time for turning back, we're in like I said, the middle of Lent. Lent's a great time to reflect back and to really get to the basics of things. We talk about in the Catholic Church, kind of giving things up for penance, and and taking up different things as penances. Whether it's saying more prayers or giving up Diet Coke, or I've heard someone say yesterday they gave up fried food. Dr. Gurundi, who I think you heard his talk as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
I was listening to him on another podcast the other day, and he was saying that a lot of times people are so focused on just giving up the things maybe that aren't so good for us, like the Diet Cokes or the alcohol or whatever. Maybe those things maybe we should be kind of knocking off on some of those. Maybe we overdo it here or there or whatever it may be. But he said instead of giving up something outside of yourself, give up something inside of yourself. And, maybe give up, having an opinion, all the time, or give up some of your pride. And so I've been kind of struggling with that, because especially with the men's conference, it's been a lot of stress. So I've been kind of quick to jump and have an opinion here, an opinion there. And so I'm going to work on that.
But like you said, I really enjoyed hearing Dr. Ray speak at the conference, because a lot of times I'll be working at home producing and editing stuff for Carolina Catholic Radio, and I'll turn on his show while I'm working and kind of multitask, listen to his show and working on stuff. And I have a lot of fun listening to his show and the things that he says.
He's a lot of fun, and I think guys need that. I remember my dad. My dad passed away a couple years ago, but I remember if we, he never was really a spiritual man until towards the end. He really kind of found his way at the end, the last several months of his life in a long battle of cancer. But I remember going to church with him, and if you ever wanted to get my dad engaged, all the priest had to do was tell a joke when he started Mass. Mm-hmm. And I think that, not that every sermon or everything needs to be a joke, but I think a lot of guys are geared that way, that we they can relate. Right. And Dr. Ray, I think, did a great job doing that by having that comedy, kind of letting guys' guards down, because humor and comedy, it has a tendency to just let people kind of step back and just kind of relax a little bit. It's not so intense. We're not talking about just the faith and just all the things you're doing wrong and all the things you need to be doing right, but also just kind of letting your guard down and relax a little bit. So he did a great job with that. I got to go to dinner with him and Keith Nestor on Friday night.
That was awesome.
It was great. We went to Nakado, a Japanese steakhouse, which doesn't sound like a great place to go for Lent. To miss a fish on Fish Friday in Lent, but we ended up getting scallops and shrimp, and of course they have sushi there and things. But we had a great time, and it was a lot of fun. If you've ever been to a Japanese steakhouse, they're cooking right in front of you, and the flames are going everywhere. And
got the big knife.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he had a few new tricks. Everybody's seen the tricks with the shrimp up into the hat and spinning the egg roll. Calling it an egg roll or whatever. Oh, yeah. But he actually caught an egg up in his hat.
Wow.
And he reached up there and he pulled out a chicken. So that was pretty good. That was really kind of
So
funny.
you got a magic show too.
We did, yeah. So we had a great time. I know having all the speakers together, the guys enjoyed it. It's just such a great day. And speaking of the men's conference, with the recordings, we saw a message earlier today that we had a comment from someone in Hawaii who picked up part of the conference and through the live stream or through the replay on YouTube.
Sure that wasn't Bear Wozniak?
I kind of thought it might have been. It might have been one of Bear's guys in Bear's den, in the man cave, I think is what he calls it. Yeah.
I really enjoyed meeting him at last year's conference, and he actually autographed one of his books for me. And
great. It's
a great book too.
Yeah, he's a solid man. That's another kind of relatable guy. He's just a man's man.
Yeah,
pro surfer.
Right.
Just all around good guy. So I think that speakers like that, and Dr. Ray and Keith Nestor as well. I mean, Keith Nestor's ministry is called Down to Earth Ministry. Like he was 20 years in the evangelical ministry before he converted to Catholicism and heard the call, and him and his wife both converted, but just a real man's man, just very relatable. So it's always good for guys to have that, because you can get the real high power, energetic, speakers that kind of load it up. And for a lot of guys, a lot of guys need that, but a lot of guys really need some comedy, they need some comic relief, I guess. So.
Right, and also want to mention for the listeners that if you want to hear any of the segments from this year's conference, you can hear them on the Catholic Men's lineup every Saturday on Carolina Catholic Radio. We start that. It's a lineup of great men's programming on Carolina Catholic Radio every Saturday, beginning at 3 o'clock with segments from the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas, followed by the Obligation the Remnant with Bill Snyder.
That's right.
So make sure you tune in for that on Carolina Catholic Radio 1270 AM and also carolinacatholicmedia.org. and the Carolina Catholic Media app.
We are out there and available, aren't we, Chris?
That's right.
Well, thanks again for tuning into The Obligation. Chris Pressler, thanks for joining us in the studio.
Oh, it's been awesome, Jason, being in the studio with you again. Hope we can do this again real soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. God bless, and Esto Vir. If you enjoyed this program and like to hear more of it, make sure to go online and check us out at www.carolinacatholicradio.org. Click that donate button, and we'd greatly appreciate it. There are also many opportunities to sponsor the show, the radio station, and the Catholic Men's Conference. Join Sensus Fidelium, Harmony Home Solutions, and Wallach Investments, who have pledged their funds to help keep Catholic radio on the air and relevant. Sensus Fidelium is a collection of Catholic homilies, apologetic videos, and other resources to grow in one true faith. They can be found online at www.sensusfidelium.com. Wallach Investment, LLC is a strategic moral investing firm committed to placing their clients' interests ahead of their own. Their mission is to be a force of good in their relationships to make the most of their clients' investment, giving them the time and confidence to pursue their mission. Contact Daniel Wallach at www.wallachinvestments.com for more information. For the Obligation Radio Show, the Catholic Men's Conference of the Carolinas, and the Carolina Media Network, my name is Jason Murphy. God bless, and Esto Vir.